A man is lying under a small, thorny tree in the middle of a desert, and he is asking God to let him die. He has run for his life. He has not eaten. His sandals are worn through, and the soles of his feet are cracked from the heat of the stones. He was, only weeks ago, the most powerful voice in his nation. Now he is a hunted man in a wasteland, and he has decided he is done. "It is enough," he whispers. "Take my life." But God does not take his life. Instead, something touches him on the shoulder. He is given bread baked on hot stones and a jar of water. He eats. He sleeps. He is touched a second time and fed again. And then he is told to get up and walk. So he walks, not for a day, not for a week. He walks for 40 days and 40 nights across a desert that should have killed him in 3 until he reaches a mountain. And on that mountain, he does not find God in the earthquake. He does not find God in the fire. He finds God in a sound, so quiet the old translators called it a still, small voice. We will come back to that man. We will find out who he is and why his 40 days matter more than almost anyone realizes. But not yet. Because first, you need to understand the number. 40. It shows up everywhere in the Bible. 40 days of rain. 40 years in the wilderness. 40 days on the mountain. 40 days of a giant screaming across a valley. 40 days of fasting in the desert. 40 days after the resurrection. And for most of us, when we read that number, our eyes just slide right past it. We think it means a long time. We think it is the Bible's way of saying a while. Here's what most people miss. That number is never random. Not once. Every single time you see 40 in the scriptures, it is doing the exact same job. It is not decoration. It is not a rounding error made by ancient writers who could not count. It is a marker, a signal, a door. This is not a story about a number. This is not a story about a coincidence. This is not a story about a random span of time that ancient people happen to like. This is a story about what God does to a person or a nation or a whole world in the space between who they were and who they are about to become. Because that is what 40 always is. It is the waiting room. It is the stretch of testing that stands between the old life and the new covenant. It is the flood before the rainbow. It is the wilderness before the promised land. It is the fasting before the ministry. It is the tomb and the 3 days stretched into a season you can feel. 40 is not the punishment. 40 is the passage. And by the time we are done, you may realize something that will change how you read your own life. You may realize that the hardest season you are living through right now, the one with no clear end, the one that feels like it is swallowing you, might not be a sign that God has forgotten you at all. It might be the surest sign that He is about to bring you through to the other side. Let's start at the beginning. Let's start with the rain. The first time the number appears, it comes with water. Picture a man named Noah standing in the doorway of a wooden ship the size of a stadium, watching the sky turn the color of a bruise. He is 600 years old, according to the text, and he has spent decades building a boat on dry ground, while his neighbors laughed. Now the laughing has stopped. The first drops hit the roof like knuckles on a door, and it rains for 40 days and 40 nights. Try to imagine those 40 days from the inside. Not the picture book version, the real one. The door is sealed. It is dark. The only light is whatever leaks through the one small window near the roof. The air is thick with the smell of animals and wet wood. And the sound never stops. Water hammering the hull, water rising against the sides, the whole ship groaning as it lifts off the ground for the first time and begins to float over the tops of drowned mountains. Noah cannot see out. He cannot know if it will ever end. He can only wait, day after day, counting. Notice what the flood actually does. We tell this story to children as if it is about animals walking 2 by 2, but read it as an adult, and it is terrifying. The flood is not a punishment that just falls out of the sky. It is an undoing. God is taking a world that had become so violent it broke His heart, and He is washing it back down to the waterline. 40 days of rain to erase the old world completely. And when the water finally goes down, Noah steps out onto a mountainside, into a world that has been made new, and the first thing he sees is a rainbow, and the first thing he hears is a covenant. A promise. A brand new deal between God and everything that breathes. Do you see it already? 40 days of testing water. Then a new covenant on the other side. Hold that thought, because the pattern is about to repeat with a man on a mountain. His name is Moses, and he is 80 years old. He was born a Hebrew slave, raised as an Egyptian prince, and he has just led a nation of former slaves out of Egypt and across a sea that stood up like walls. Now God calls him up a mountain called Sinai. And here's the part we forget. While Moses is up in the cloud, the whole nation is standing at the bottom, staring up. They have watched the mountain catch fire at the summit. They have heard thunder that was not weather. The ground under their feet has been shaking. Moses walked up into the smoke and the fire and the sound, and then he was gone. 1 day passed, then a week, then 2. The people are waiting at the base of a burning mountain, and their leader has vanished into the top of it. You can feel the fear building in the camp. Where is he? Is he dead? And Moses stays up there. You can guess the number, 40 days and 40 nights. The Hebrew word for 40 is arbaim. It is built on the word for the number 4, arba, the number the ancient mind tied to the whole created world. For directions, for corners, for rivers flowing out of Eden. And arbaim stretches, that idea of a complete world, into a complete span of testing. A full cycle, not a random 40, a finished 40. And what does Moses come down carrying? A covenant. Stone tablets with the words of God cut into them. He went up as the leader of a mob of ex-slaves. He came down as the mediator of a nation bound to God by law. 40 days on the mountain turned a crowd into a people. But it gets stranger, because the same nation that Moses led out of slavery is about to run into their own 40, and this one is going to hurt. They arrive at the edge of the promised land. It is right there. They can see it. So they send 12 men in to scout it out, and those 12 men spend 40 days walking through the land God has already promised to give them. 40 days tasting the fruit, 40 days seeing the cities. And when they come back, 10 of the 12 are shaking with fear. There are giants in that land, they say. We look like grasshoppers next to them. We can't do it. Only 2 of the 12, a man named Caleb and a man named Joshua, stand up and say, God said the land is ours. Let's go. The nation listens to the 10. They weep. They refuse to go in. And here is where God says something that unlocks this entire video. He tells them, because you scouted the land for 40 days, you will wander in this wilderness for 40 years, a year for every day. 1 day, 1 year. And that entire generation, everyone who refused to trust him, will grow old and die in the sand. Only Caleb and Joshua will live to cross over. 40 days of doubt became 40 years of wilderness. Now, I need you to sit with what that wilderness actually was, because this is the part people rush past. Picture 40 years of it. Every morning, bread appears on the ground like frost, and every morning they gather it, because there is nothing else. They live in tents. They fold those tents, and move, and pitch them, and fold them again, for 4 decades. And the whole time, they are burying people. Grandparents. Parents. A slow line of graves stretching across the sand behind them. One generation quietly dying off, so the next one can go in. That is what 40 years look like. But watch the word the text keeps using. God led them into the wilderness to prove them, and the Hebrew is Nazah. And Nazah does not mean to punish. It means to test the way you test gold in a fire, not to destroy it. To reveal what is real inside it. To burn off everything that is not. The 40 years were brutal, but the purpose was never punishment for its own sake. It was to take a nation that still thought like slaves and forge them, over one full cycle of testing, into a people who could finally walk into freedom and hold on to it. 40 days of testing water, a new world. 40 days on the mountain, a new covenant. 40 years in the sand. A new nation, same number, same shape, every single time. Let me pause here for just a moment, because we are standing right in the middle of the pattern, and I don't want you to lose it. 3 times now, the same shape. 40 days of water and a new world. 40 days on the mountain, and a new covenant. 40 years in the sand, and a new nation. Every time that number appears, it marks off a season of testing, with a beginning and an end, a waiting room between the old life and the new one. And we are only halfway, because the number is about to show up in a valley with a giant in it, in a city that deserved to be destroyed, and finally in a desert where the Son of God went hungry for 40 days. If this is helping you see something you never saw before, do me a small favor and subscribe so the next person who needs this pattern can find it too. And while you are down there, tell me in the comments, is there a number, a season, a stretch of waiting that keeps repeating in your own life? I read those. I want to know. Now, let's go down into the valley. There is a valley in Israel called Elah, and for 40 days it belonged to a monster. Picture the ground. 2 ridges of hills facing each other, and a dry stream bed running down the middle of the valley between them. On one ridge, the army of Israel. On the other, the army of the Philistines. Neither side will come down first, because whoever crosses that open ground first is exposed. So they wait, camped on their hills, staring at each other across the gap. And into that gap, every single morning, one man walks out alone. His name was Goliath, and the text says he stood 6 cubits and a span, somewhere around 9 feet tall. He wore a coat of bronze scales that weighed more than a grown man, and the iron tip of his spear alone weighed as much as a small child. He walked out into the middle of that valley where both armies could see him, and he screamed the same thing across the open ground. Send me a man. Send me one man to fight me. If he wins, we'll serve you. If I win, you serve us. And every morning, the entire army of Israel, grown soldiers, trained men, men with families waiting at home, looked at him and looked at each other and ran back to their tents shaking. He did this in the morning, and he did this in the evening. For 40 days. Count that. 80 times that giant walked into the valley. 80 times God's people heard, twice a day, every day, that they were not enough, that their God could not save them, that they had no future, that the smart thing was to surrender. Think about what that does to a man over 40 days. The first morning, you are afraid, but you are angry. By the second week, the anger is gone, and only the fear is left. By the 40th day, you don't even flinch anymore, because you have already decided in your heart that the giant is right about you. That is what a testing season does. When you face it without faith, it doesn't just frighten you. Given enough days, it convinces you. This is a 40, same as the flood and the mountain, but this time the test is not water. The test is a voice telling God's people they have no future twice a day until they believe it. And the question hanging over that valley is simple. Is anyone going to trust God more than they trust the giant? For 39 days, the answer is no. And then, on the 40th kind of day, a teenager shows up. He is not a soldier. He is a shepherd boy named David, sent by his father to carry bread and cheese to his older brothers on the front line. He arrives at the camp just as Goliath walks out for the daily performance, and he watches the whole army, including his own brothers, turn and run. And this boy, who has spent his life alone in the fields killing lions and bears to protect a flock of sheep, says the thing nobody in that valley has been willing to say for 40 days. Who is this uncircumcised Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God? The 40 days of testing, in the moment one person finally trusts God out loud. One stone, one swing of a sling, and the season that had held an entire nation in fear for 40 days is over in about 4 seconds. Do you see how the shape holds? The 40 is the waiting, and the waiting breaks the instant faith walks into the valley. Here's the part nobody tells you. The number doesn't only mark testing for God's own people. Sometimes it marks mercy for people you would never expect God to bother saving at all. There is a city called Nineveh, the capital of Assyria, one of the cruelest empires the ancient world ever produced. These were people who bragged on their own monuments about skinning their enemies alive. And God tells a reluctant prophet named Jonah to walk into that city and deliver a message of exactly 8 words. Yet 40 days, and Nineveh shall be overthrown. Now, here is what makes Jonah's story so raw. Jonah did not run from that assignment because he was afraid. He ran because he was afraid it would work. He wanted Nineveh destroyed. These people had terrorized his nation, and he wanted to watch them burn. The last thing Jonah wanted was to give them 40 days to change. But stop and hear what those 40 days actually are. God could have wiped Nineveh off the map in a single moment, the way the flood wiped out the world. He did not. He put 40 days on the clock, and every single one of those 40 days was an open door. 40 days for the most violent city on earth to turn around. 40 days of mercy, dressed up to look like a warning. And it worked. The message spread through the streets, and the whole city stopped. The text says they put on rough sackcloth, from the greatest of them down to the least, even the king coming down off his throne and sitting in the dust. A whole city in mourning for who they had been, and God saw it, and he relented, and he did not destroy them. That is the piece we miss when we read this number as a threat. 40 days before judgment is not God counting down to your destruction. It is God holding the door open for as long as he possibly can, hoping with everything in him that you will walk through it before the time runs out. So let's be clear about what this number is not. 40 is not punishment. God did not send the flood or the wilderness or the giant or the warning to Nineveh because he was finished with anyone. 40 is not delay. It is not God being slow or forgetful or distracted while you suffer through it. And 40 is not abandonment. It is never, not one single time in the entire Bible, the moment God walks away. It is the exact opposite. 40 is the number he uses when he is most involved, most present, working underneath the surface of a season you can barely stand to live through. Which brings us, finally, to a desert, and to the one person who walked into a 40 knowing exactly what it was and chose it anyway. The desert of Judea is not sand. It is worse than sand. It is a wasteland of pale, broken limestone hills, cut by dry ravines, with no shade and almost no water. The kind of place where the heat comes up off the rocks at you from below, so there is nowhere to hide from it, not above you, not beneath you. And it is into this place, straight after his baptism, that Jesus is driven. The text uses that exact word. Driven by the Spirit of God, to be tested for 40 days and 40 nights. He does not eat for the entire time. Try to feel what 40 days without food does to a body. The first days are the sharpest, the stomach cramping, the constant thought of bread. But then the hunger goes quiet in a way that is more dangerous than the pain, because the body has started to consume itself to stay alive. The mind gets thin, the desert gets louder, and it is at the very end of those 40 days, when he is weakest, alone, starving, that the tempter finally comes to him. The Greek word the gospel writers use here is perazzo, to test, to try, to put someone to the proof. It is the exact same idea as that Hebrew word from the wilderness, neza, the gold and the fire. And now the whole pattern of the entire Bible is standing in one man, in one desert. Every 40 that ever came, before, the flood, the mountain, the wandering, the giant, the doomed city, all of it is gathered up and pressed down into these 40 days in one starving body. And watch what the enemy goes after. He does not tempt Jesus with something obviously evil. Look closely at all three, because they are the same three temptations that break the rest of us. First, bread. You're starving. You're the Son of God. Turn these stones into bread. The temptation to meet a real need the wrong way, right now, instead of waiting on God. Second, the temple. Throw yourself down. Let the angels catch you. Make God prove he loves you. The temptation to force God's hand, to demand a sign instead of trusting in the dark. And third, the whole world. The tempter offers him every kingdom on earth. All of it. No cross, no suffering, no 40. Just bow down once and skip straight to the crown. Do you see what every single one of them really is? A shortcut, a way to escape the 40 early, a way to reach the reward without the wilderness. And 3 times, Jesus refuses to leave the desert one day sooner than his Father intends. He answers each one with a line from Scripture. He stays in the 40. He finishes it. And he walks out of that wasteland and begins the ministry that will save the world. Here is a detail worth holding on to. Where the very first man in a garden failed his test over a piece of fruit he did not need, this man in a wilderness passes his, starving, over a piece of bread he could have made with a word. That single victory sent a shape through the rest of history. The earliest Christians noticed it. In one of the oldest Christian documents we have outside the Bible, a first-century text called the Didache, the church was already ordering its life around days of fasting. And within a few generations, the historian Eusebius records the church tying a season of fasting directly to those 40 days of Jesus in the desert. That is where the 40 days of Lent come from. For nearly 2,000 years, believers have voluntarily walked into a small wilderness of their own every single year, just to remember what their Lord did in His. The pattern was so unmistakable that the church built a calendar around it. Now, do you remember how he started? A man under a small tree, in the middle of a desert, asking God to let him die. Fed twice by an angel. Told to get up and walk. And he walked for 40 days and 40 nights to a mountain, where he found God not in the earthquake and not in the fire, but in a still, small voice. That man was a prophet named Elijah. And here is what I could not tell you at the beginning. The mountain he walked 40 days to reach was called Horeb. And Horeb is another name for Sinai, the exact same mountain where Moses spent his 40 days receiving the covenant, centuries before Elijah was ever born. Do you understand what the Bible is quietly doing? It is walking a broken, exhausted, suicidal prophet, step by step, across a 40-day wilderness, all the way back to the very spot where the whole story began. 2 men, 2 40s, 1 mountain, 1 voice, and it does not stop there. Because centuries after Elijah, on another mountain, Jesus stands and begins to shine like the sun in front of his closest friends, and 2 men appear beside him out of nowhere to speak with him. Not a crowd. 2. Moses and Elijah, the man of the 40 days on the mountain, and the man of the 40-day walk to the mountain, standing on either side of the Son of God, who has just come through his own 40 in the desert. 3 wildernesses, 3 40s, gathered into a single blaze of light on a mountaintop. That is not a coincidence. That is a signature. The whole Bible is signed with this number, and once you have seen it, you cannot unsee it. But I don't want to leave this only in the ancient world, because you did not click on this video to admire a pattern from a safe distance. You clicked because something in you already suspected this might be about you. So let me ask you something. Have you ever lived through a season with no clear end? The stretch of waiting for the test results to come back, when your whole life narrows down to a phone that won't ring. The night before the surgery, lying in the dark, staring at the ceiling. The months after you lost the job, or the marriage, or the person you loved most, when every morning felt like the same gray morning starting over. Nobody hands you a calendar for those seasons. Nobody leans in and whispers, it's day 12 of 40, or hold on, it's day 38, you're almost through. You just wake up inside it, and you count the mornings, and you begin to wonder if it will ever end, and somewhere in there, some quiet part of you starts to believe that it won't. That is a wilderness. And if the whole witness of Scripture is true, then your wilderness is not a sign that God has walked away from you. It might be the surest sign that He is closer than He has ever been, testing you the way a refiner tests gold, burning off what was never real, forging something in you that only ever comes out of a person under pressure, with no way around it and no way back. Not to break you, to bring you through to the other side. And even the very end of the story carries the number. After the resurrection, before He returns to heaven, Jesus spends one last stretch of time walking and eating and talking with His followers. Go and read how long. It is 40 days. 40 days on the far side of the empty tomb, the last waiting room in the Gospels, right before everything changed forever. The tomb had a Friday and a long silent Saturday, and then a Sunday morning. And your wilderness has a 40th day too. You cannot see it from where you are standing right now, but it is there. It has always been there. And it is coming. So what do you do with all of this? Let me leave you with 3 things to carry out of here. The first one is simple, and it is a fact. Every time you see the number 40 in the Bible, it is marking off a season of testing with a beginning and an end. It is never open-ended. It is never forever. The flood stopped. The wandering ended. The giant fell. The fast broke. Every single 40 in the scriptures has a 40th day, and on the other side of it there is always a new world, a new covenant, a new nation, a new ministry, a new beginning. The number is not a prison. It is a passage. The second one is personal, and I need you to actually take it, not just hear it. If you are in a wilderness right now, if you are in the middle of a season that has no calendar and no clear end, this is the truth I want you to hold on to tonight. It will end. You may be on day 2, or you may be on day 39, and I know you cannot tell which from where you are sitting. But there is a 40th day with your name on it, and God has never once, in the entire span of Scripture, started a 40 He did not intend to finish. He is not going to start over with you. And the third one is the one I really came here to say. God does not count to 40 in order to punish you. Read the whole Bible, and you will never find it used that way. He counts to 40 to carry you across. The wilderness is not proof that He left. It is the very place where He does His deepest work. The flood that makes a new world, the mountain that makes a covenant, the fast that begins a rescue. Your worst season is not the absence of God. It may turn out to be the room where you meet Him most, in the still, small voice, the same voice that met Elijah at the end of his 40 days when he was certain his life was over. It is not a punishment. It is not a delay. It is not the end of your story. It is a door. And you are already walking through it. So let me ask you, before you go, and please tell me in the comments, because I read them. Which 40 in this video hit you the hardest? The flood? The wilderness? The giant in the valley? The Lord in the desert? Or are you living inside a 40 of your own right now, counting the mornings, waiting for a 40th day you cannot yet see? Whatever it is, I want you to hear this one last time before you close the video. The rain stopped. The desert ended. The stone tablets came down the mountain. The giant fell. The city was spared. The Lord walked out of the wilderness. And the tomb, on the 3rd day, was empty. Your 40th day is coming too. Hold on until the morning.